We have officially made it. No more off-season videos, no more what ifs, no more playing games on paper. We are at the day of opening night for the Carolina Hurricanes. Now games are going to matter. So on the Thursday edition of Locked On Hurricanes, let's jump into game one of the 2025-26 season for your Carolina Hurricanes.
You're Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Thursday edition of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you to the Everyday for making this your first listen of the day, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, talking everything about your Carolina Hurricanes. I'm your host, Zach Martin. I'm the credentialed Carolina Hurricanes beat writer over at the Hawkers, also the co-host of the Surgecast, which is a weekly Carolina Hurricanes podcast, along with all my duties here at Locked On Hurricanes. On the Thursday edition of the show, we're going to be going over the Wednesday practice updates, what came from that, as we kind of get an idea what the lines could look like going into Thursday night's home and season opener for the Canes. Also going to let fans know where to watch. So we're going to start doing some of our previews going into these games as well. And then going to talk about what the potential lines could actually look like going into the home opener for your Carolina Hurricanes. And then finally, who are the players to watch and maybe what could be some of the keys to the games for the Hurricanes to get their first victory of the season. But before we jump into all of that, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Now, for this game for the Carolina Hurricanes against the New Jersey Devils, the game will be at 7:30 p.m. puck drop, usually at 7, but since they are on the national broadcast, it has been moved back to 7:30, and fans can watch this on ESPN Plus and on Hulu. They're going to have Buccigross with AJ Malesko doing the call, and of course they're going to have Ardo Cal, Emily Kaplan, and a few others, John Tortorella, back in studio, so make sure to keep an eye on for that. If you want to listen to the radio side of things, because if you want to hear Mike and Tripp, they will be on 99.9 The Fan or through the Hurricanes app or wherever you listen to your Canes on the radio. But yes, Mike and Tripp will at least be on the radio call, while ESPN will have the national on the Plus or on Hulu. So make sure to check that out. Like I said, the game is at 7:30. So it should be very interesting to see how the Hurricanes do in their first game of the regular season against the New Jersey Devils. And we did see from practice on Wednesday that there were some small minor updates. Now with Peter Kachekov, he did miss practice on Wednesday. He played through the entire preseason game on Saturday against Nashville, but somehow between then and now, according to Rod Brind'Amour, he has got a little bit nicked up. They are erring on the side of caution, so they don't know if he's going to be fully ready to go on Thursday night, so that leads into what the possible lines and goaltending situation is going to look like for the Hurricanes on Thursday night. Wednesday practice lines, they had Ehlers, Aho, Jarvis, Svechnikov, Stankoven, and Blake, Martin Uxtal, Carrier, Hall, Kotkaniemi, and Robinson with Mark Jankowski as the extra forward. On the defense, Slavin Walker, Miller Chatfield, Nikish, and Gostisbehere with Mike Riley as their seventh defenseman. In net, Frederick Anderson and Brandon Bussey. Now, after the practice, they talked to Brandon a little bit more, the newly claimed goalie off of waivers, and it was revealed that him and his fiance were on their way from South Florida to Charlotte because he was, all intents and purposes, thought he was going to go play for the Checkers. When he got the call from Eric Tolsky saying he had claimed, luckily the drive wasn't too much farther. Instead of going to Charlotte, made a slight detour and ended up in Raleigh. And, of course, Wednesday was the first practice that he had with the team since being claimed. Of course, there's a lot of his Providence Bruins gear on and stuff like that. And, we'll talk a little bit more about, previewing the game in segment 2, but you kind of got your first glimpses of him, at least in the crease and under, going through a practice with the team. Of course, he is going to be wearing 32 for the season. Some other notes Ryan Brundamore is expecting to have all 7 of his defensemen ready to go, because even with the fact that Miller and Slavin didn't really play any preseason games and Jalen Chatfield missed, time here and there, he feels like all of them are going to be ready to go. And of course, like I said, with the extra healthy guys, looks like it might be Mike Riley and Mark Jankowski might be the healthy extras, but there could be the possibility if KK's not 100% ready to go, Jankowski might be one of those guys, because he did get some reps with Taylor Hall and Eric Robinson during the practice. And then looking at the power play units, it's not really surprising what they're looking like. Aho, Ehlers, Jarvis, Svechnikov with Gostisbehere. And then in the second pairing, they looked at Blake, Hall, Stankoven with Miller and Walker, because it's come out over the last few days that they don't want to throw so much at Nikishin, that they feel like that they want to kind of just ease him in to just play some 5-on-5 for a while, still try to get your feet wet, still try to understand the system, and not just throw everything at him right out the gate in his first full regular season in North America, and on the smaller ice compared to what they usually play over there in the KHL or in Europe in general. So there's a sense that Nikishin's going to be just given 5-on-5 time to kind of get more acclimated to the system, language, stuff like that. So don't expect it to be on a power play or a penalty kill at the start of the season. It could change at some point, but that's kind of what you're looking at with at least for the defenseman on the power play side of things. It's going to be Ghost on the top power play, and then Miller, Walker on the second pair. But that's these are the lines we've been kind of seeing a lot through the training camp, preseason games, and even since Saturday in the few practices that the Hurricanes have, because now we're at the point where it's not going to be a practice probably every day. I mean, they might have a morning skate, they might have a day off here and there from practice, or however it goes, but it's not going to be like what we've been seeing, through training camp, where it's just a bunch of 2-a-days every single day with the random off day somewhere thrown in there. So there's going to be a little bit more of a change of pace when it comes to practices, morning skates, because now games are going to matter. Like, we finally hit the point now to where it's no more what ifs. There's no more, how are we going to speculate? What could the lines look like? Can this team go make the playoffs and go win the Stanley Cup and all this? It's not a lot of speculations. It's now game 1 is here. It is Thursday. Like, there's no more waiting. There's no more going through another offseason. Like, okay, what's our talking points? What could this, and that happen? No, now the talking points are, who are the guys to watch? What are going to be the keys to the game? Who are the Hurricanes need to focus on the other side of the ice? And that's going to be definitely a big thing for sure, because now you're going into a season where expectations are really high for the Hurricanes. They're one of a few teams that are looking at being. Some are projecting them to finish top 5 in the entire NHL. Some are picking them to win the Eastern Conference and be the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, at least in the regular season. And some thinking they might make it to the Eastern Conference final. I don't think anyone's really picked them to go make the Cup final, but there's a lot of speculations a lot of predictions of them going in there and making at least to the Cup final. And, like I said, winning the Metro, possibly win, going and being the top seed in the East, and we'll see how they go in the playoffs. Of course, if everyone listened to the Wednesday episode, you heard me predict the Hurricanes to win the Metro and, win the Eastern Conference and go win the Stanley Cup. Now, of course, there are predictions. Everyone's got one. Is it going to come to fruition? I doubt. Who knows? Anything can happen. That's the thing with hockey. Anything can happen. A random team get hot at the right time. A team could get cold. All this stuff can happen, but that's what it comes to when it comes to predictions and stuff like that. But the thing is, there's no more guessing. Now it's go on the ice, play the game for 60 minutes, do your thing, and win. And like I said, for the way fans to watch the first game, ESPN Plus on Hulu, and you can also go listen to the radio side on 99.9 The Fan. So that being said, let's preview the game. Who should the Hurricanes be kind of looking out for, and what are the possible lines that the team could roll out in game 1 of the 25-26 season. Well, stick around. We'll talk about it here in a second on a Thursday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better if you're actually following your team or maybe you're following your fantasy team. Either way, FanDuel makes it that much more exciting. So, what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Welcome back to segment 2 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. Now, we kind of talked about some practice updates, where to watch and listen to the game. But now let's actually dive into the preview of the home and season opener for the Carolina Hurricanes against the New Jersey Devils, and what could the possible lines be? Well, like I said, this game, 7:30 on ESPN Plus and Hulu, and this is the first of 4 regular season meeting games between the Hurricanes and the New Jersey Devils. First one, obviously, tonight on Thursday, October 9th. Then they don't play each other until January 4th in New Jersey, then back in New Jersey on January 17th, and then finally in Carolina on March 28th. So there's a big gap between October 9th and January 4th, where these teams they'll play each other one time in the 2025 portion of the calendar, and then not until January 4th of next year. Now, going back to the leaders from last year, players to watch, Jesper Bratt led the Devils last year in 88 points. Nick Hischier with 35 goals, and of course Bratt with 67 assists. With Sebastian Aho, 74 points. Seth Jarvis, 32 goals. Sebastian Aho with 45 assists. Now, tail of the tape, what are we looking at? Obviously, the Devils finished 3rd in the power play last year, Carolina 25th. Penalty kill, these teams were 1 and 2, with Carolina being number 1. Face off, obviously the Hurricanes 52.7%, finished 6th compared to the Devils 19th. Goals for per game, the Hurricanes were the 9th best team in the league, scoring last year at 3.24, while the Devils were 20th at 29.3. Goals allowed, the Devils left the 5th fewest goals at 2.68, while Carolina gave up 2.8, putting them in 10th. The goaltending matchup, I think this is where it's going to get very interesting, because if Kochetkov is not ready to go, I have a strong feeling. I don't think it's a strong feeling. I think it's a foregone conclusion that if Kochetkov's not ready to go, I think the Hurricanes are going to go with Frederik Andersen. Of course, Frederik Andersen last year, 13 wins, 8 losses, and 1 overtime loss, a 2.50 goals against, an .899 save percentage, and 1 shutout. But as I said last year, I've been saying all through the offseason, I know you guys are probably sick of me hearing me say this. Take those goals against average and the save percentage with a grain of salt from last season, because the last 9 games of the year, the Hurricanes were resting a lot of guys, and they weren't really putting in 100% because they knew they were locked in, but they were just trying to make sure guys stayed healthy. So that 2.50 goals against and the .899 save percentage for Freddie, I would not take that as he struggled or wasn't a great season. It's just they were trying to get ready for the playoffs. So, like I said, take those numbers and kind of be like, he actually had some decent numbers. It's just looking at the last 9 games, don't read too much into that. Now, for the New Jersey Devils, you heard me say it on the prediction show, of course, to bring back Jake Allen and Jacob Markstrom. Now, Jake Allen, 13, 16, and 1 to 266 goals against, a 908 save percentage of 4 shutouts last year for New Jersey, while Markstrom, 26, 16, and 6, a 2.50 goals against, a 900 save percentage and 4 shutouts. Now, when you hear those numbers for Markstrom compared to Andersen, yeah, he had 3 more shutouts, but he played in a ton of more games compared to what Freddie did, because Freddie missed over 30 games last year due to knee surgery, but basically a .001 save percentage difference in the same goals against, but of course, like I said, 26 wins compared to Freddie's 13 with a lot more games to play. I think for New Jersey, do not be surprised if it's going to be Jacob Markstrom. I think he's going to be the guy for the Devils going into the game in terms of a starter. So it'll be very interesting to see how that kind of works out for them in terms of what New Jersey wants to do. But I feel like Markstrom will be that guy for New Jersey compared to who the Hurricanes are going to go with, and I think that's going to be Frederick Anderson more than anything else. So when you look at what the practice lines were for the Devils on Wednesday, of course, it could be different by the start of opening night for them, or for them being on the road to start their season. For New Jersey, they went with Dadonov, Jack Hughes, Brott, Meyer, Heischer, Mercer, Palat, Glass, Brown, Cotter, Glendening, and Gritchick. And of course, on the defense, Brett Pesce did come back for practice on Wednesday. It was Luke Hughes with Pesce, Siegenthaler with Hamilton, Dylan Nemec, and of course, Markstrom, Allen in goals. Their extras, McEwen, Stefan Nason, and Dennis Cholowski. So that's kind of what you're looking like at the Devils practice, group going into the game. Of course, big shout out to Christy Flannery for doing that. She is one of the beat writers over there at the Hockey News for the New Jersey Devils. So big appreciation to her for providing those lines. That's what you're looking at for the Devils. Now, for the Carolina Hurricanes, you kind of already heard me talk about it in the first segment of where their practice updates were, but I think those are going to be the same lines for the Hurricanes going into this game. We've seen it throughout pretty much all of training camp, especially for the main group when they were going through all the two-a-days, and then even after all the roster cuts from going from 40 to 26 players, and then eventually down to 23. It's been the same pretty much the entire way. Over the last few years, you kind of got an indication from Rod Brind'Amour as training camp went on. If there's hardly any changes, unless a guy is out due to injury or just rest or precaution or what have you, unless there's a significant swap over multiple days, if there's none of that, the lines are pretty much set from the outset. And with Logan Stankoven, he was the 2C for the entire time. I think he's going to be the 2C for the Carolina Hurricanes. And of course, I put out an article earlier this week for the Hockey Writers talking about their opening night roster that was announced back on Monday. And of course, on Wednesday, I did the first of hoping to do a lot of game preview articles going into every game this season. So if you haven't checked that out, I'll make sure to leave that link to that article in the description. But the hope is to at least get a game preview article out for hopefully every game as the season goes along over at the Hockey Writers. So make sure to go check that out. But the thing Logan Stankoven is going to be the 2C, top line, Ehlers, Aho, Jarvis. The hope for that group is the fact that you're looking at Ehlers staying healthy for the whole season, played 69 games last year. If he can stay healthy, get you about 75 to 80 games, I think you're in a good spot for the Carolina Hurricanes, hopefully the 80 more than anything else. Same thing for Jarvis. He missed 7 games last year. I hope he can stay healthy. Hopefully the shoulder doesn't bother him too much. If he does stay healthy and play, gives you about 80, 81 games, I think he's on pace for 75 to 80 points. Now you're looking at Stankoven in his first probably full season of not either getting called up or traded. So it'll be interesting to see how he plays as the second line center. Then, of course, he's got Andrei Svechnikov, 15 points in the playoffs last year. Hopefully there's some carryover there. And then you got Jackson Blake, 17 goals in his rookie season. The hope is he takes that next step and hit 50 points at least for the Hurricanes. You got the Jordans of Martin Okenstall with Carey. Hopefully Carey plays the whole season and not miss over 30 games, and that should be your bruising line. It'll be curious to see what Taylor Hall does in his first full season with the Canes, of course, with KK and Robinson. Defense, how's Kendra Miller going to be with basically no preseason games, still getting used to the system, his first year in Carolina. Same thing with Keishan, first full year with him. Hopefully all those guys kind of blend and gel well into the system. Of course, that helps too when you got Slavin, Walker, Chatfield, and Gostisbehere kind of on the defensive side of things to help those guys out. And of course, goaltending with Pierre Kochetkov out. Hopefully he's okay, at least can dress. If not, at least you got Frederick Anderson in goal, we all know what Freddie can do when he's on his A game, which is he's pretty much a top 10 goalie in the league. When he is, then of course, with them claiming Brandon Busty, at least they have a backup goalie already ready to go if Kochetkov is not ready. But those are probably going to be your lines, pairings, in goaltending for the Hurricanes going into their home opener. That being said, who will be the players to watch for the Hurricanes, and what are going to be the keys of the game? Well, stick around and we'll talk about it here in a second on a Thursday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Welcome back to segment 3 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. All right, so we talked about practice updates, where to watch the game, where to listen, previewing the game, possible lines for both sides. Now we're talking about players to watch and keys to the game. Now for the Carolina Hurricanes, players to watch. Obviously kind of no-brainers for ones to watch. Nikolai Ehlers is going to be the first ones for me. Just because the fact that this is his regular season debut for the Hurricanes, at least, obviously because he's played 10 years already in the league with the Jets, but this will be his first home opener, first regular season game with the Canes after signing that $8.5 million deal. So I'm really curious to see how he's going to be, because he played a couple preseason games with the main roster. Now it's games are going to count. Now it's, okay, how's the chemistry going to be with him, Aho, and Jarvis, at least on the top line? And, of course, how is he going to be in the first power play with those guys along with Svech and Gostisbehere? We all have heard, there was the indication that he wanted to be one of the top guys in Winnipeg. He wanted to be top line, top power play. Never gave him the opportunity. Comes to Carolina, and Carolina's like, we want to give you that chance. And now he's been given the opportunity. Okay, for the next 6 seasons, you want to be one of those guys leading the pack. Here you go. Go be our top, first line left winger. Go be on our top power play and just be the nickname fly that you are, and be fast, make plays, and score goals. Like I said, Ehlers is going to be one of those guys I'm going to keep an eye on early because he was the big pickup for the Hurricanes in the offseason. Everyone talked about, the Hurricanes need a top 6 scorer. The Hurricanes need a top 6 scorer. Hurricanes got their guy. They got the top 6 scorer, and now it's like, okay, all eyes are on you. Let's see what you can do. But I have a lot of faith in Nikolai Ehlers that as long as he can stay healthy and obviously give the 100% that he always does, I think Ehlers is going to be one of those guys for the Hurricanes. Obviously, you're going to look at Keandre Miller. How's he going to be with basically no preseason games and mainly practices? How is he going to be early on for the Canes in his first game? He is going to be paired with Jalen Chatfield. Not a bad guy to be paired with. Chatfield's really put himself into a spot to being one of the top 4 defensemen on the Hurricanes and probably a lot of other teams around the league too. So, it's how is he going to kind of get used to the flow of the things. I think there's obviously going to be a learning curve. Every defenseman coming into the Hurricanes has to go through a learning curve. But when you got, Tim Glacier as your defense coach, you got Jacob Slavin, all of them, I think there, you do have, an idea with what Chatfield can do with his speed and his back check. Miller can kind of push up a little bit more, and he's a fast guy too. So you do have 2 fast guys on your second pairing, and they can kind of, work well with each other, be the yin and yang, or kind of, flow with each other, pick up on what needs to happen. So for Miller, he's someone to keep an eye on because, like I said, he's going to be new to the system. It's his, first year with the Hurricanes, first Canes home opener. It's going to be a lot of, emotions are going to be running high. Never really got any reps in the preseason. Now your first game with the team in general is game 1 of the regular season. Then, obviously, Alexander Nikishin is another one, too. How is he going to be in his first regular season game, home opener? Like I said, it's going to be electric there. Everyone's going to be really excited to watch him play. And, like I said, the emotions are going to be high, too, because it's his first regular season game overall. And, and the thing, too, is he's not going to be getting special teams minutes. It's just all 5-on-5 play. So, how many minutes is he going to get? Is he going to be in the right spots? And, like I said, for Miller, it's going to be a learning curve, and his is a huge, I think even bigger learning curve because the fact you're learning a system, you're learning a language, you're playing in your first ever regular season game in the NHL for your debut essentially in the regular season. So it should be very interesting to see how that plays out. Now, keys to the game. Limit the penalties. You heard me say it's a lot last year. When you're talking about the New Jersey Devils, who were a top 5 power play team last year, it could be a little bit different, but with the fact that they have almost all their guys back from last year, and then you add Evgeny Dadonov, who's no slouch of himself, and the fact that you have a healthy Jack Hughes, a healthy Nico Hischier, Jesper Bratt had a pop-off last year for them, you want to make sure that you're keeping them off the power play. Because the Hurricanes are, while the Hurricanes are always a top 3 PK team, they strive on 5-on-5 play. If the Hurricanes can keep this to an even strength 5v5 game, the Hurricanes are going to be in a really good spot. If they get 1 or 2 penalties, okay, so be it. It happens. But if you start getting to like 3, 4, 5, 6 penalties a game, especially in the home opener, then you're putting yourself into a tough spot because now you're going to tire your PK guys out. All the guys you want to have on the 5-on-5, they're all going to be at different levels of, some are going to be more tired than others. Some are going to be a little bit more fresh. So you have to limit the penalties. Stay out of the box. Keep this thing 5-on-5. And obviously, something we talked about a lot last year as well, 60 minutes of Hurricanes hockey. There should be no, kind of slow starts. There was a ton of games last year where they started a little bit slow. I know it's a new season, couple new guys, but a lot of this a lot of the guys from the roster last year will be on this team this year too. And all Hurricanes fans know it. There were some slow starts last year. This is your first game of a new season where there's a lot of expectations on you. You're facing the team that's also favored to win the division. So right from the outset, you don't play New Jersey until 2026 portion of the calendar where you're going into January and March. This is your one time in the last few months of 2025, you need to get your points against them early. So you can't have a slow start. It's got to be 60 minutes of Hurricanes hockey right from the jump, foot on the gas, and play your style. That's all you can really do. And I think that's kind of those are the two main components. Limit the penalties, straight up 60 minutes right from the jump, have a quick start if you're the Carolina Hurricanes, and just play your system. Don't get cute with it. Don't do the extra passes. If you have the lane, shoot it. It's the urgency has to be there. I know it kind of plays into 60 minutes of Hurricanes hockey, but there's got to be that urgency. Don't try to get cute with the extra passes. Try to, find the perfect play. If you have to score a greasy goal, score a greasy goal. If you have the lane and you think what if I pass it to this guy? If you feel like you have the shot, take the shot. Don't just try to make the extra pass to make the extra pass. And the thing is with the shots too, quality over quantity. We all know the Hurricanes can shoot the puck. They can put up 35 to 40 shots a night, but most of the time it's at the goalie's chest, hitting him in the logo. Got to make the quality shots matter. If you shoot 25 to 30, but you score 3 or 4 goals, then great. You have the quality opportunities. Is your high danger chance high? Then you did the right thing. You're making the goalie work because Markstrom is a guy who can get very comfortable with a lot of shots in his chest. You got to shoot at him high. You got to keep him moving. If you keep him placid and stagnant where he's just kind of focusing up on the puck, if he's squaring up the puck all the time, it's going to be hard to score on him. You got to keep Markstrom moving. You got to hit him high. If you want to try to shoot low, shoot for a rebound. Don't just shoot it to make an easy pad save and then it goes to no one. You got to make Markstrom work. You got to make the quality shots over the quantity. And I think those will be the big keys for the Hurricanes to win their first game of the season. But with that being said, we're finally here. No more what ifs, no more games on paper, no more predictions, none of that. It is talking about actual games that actually matter with points on the board. After a long, arduous preseason, we are finally here. It's the home and season opener for the Carolina Hurricanes and against the New Jersey Devils, and I am so excited to actually talk about real games that matter. So, until then, this will be the Thursday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Thank you for making your first listen of the day. If you're here to listen, check out the Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL, on YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcast. If you want to keep up with me, I'm a One True Zach on X. The podcast is LO_Hurricanes. I'm also on Blue Sky, the Zachary Martin, where if you click the link trees in my bios, you can find all my written content at thehockeybears.com. I've been putting out a lot of stuff recently. Opening night rosters, game previews, all that stuff. Anything that has been going on with the Hurricanes, we will have something over there for you at thehockeybears.com. So make sure to go check that out. If you want to check my other podcasts, it's the Searchcast on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. For Locked On Hurricanes, we're on Spotify, Google, Apple, iHeartRadio, wherever you listen to your podcast. Make sure you leave a 5-star rating and review because I might just read it on the show. For YouTube, it's Locked On Hurricanes. Subscribe. Hit the bell notification so you don't miss a show. Hit the thumbs up. Tell me if you like the show as well. Share with other Caniacs who become everydayers just like you. But hope everyone enjoyed the Thursday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Enjoy your Thursday. Have fun watching your Hurricanes in their home opener against the New Jersey Devils tonight on Thursday at 7:30 on ESPN Plus or on Hulu. And until next time, as always, let's go Canes.